Students of the world, welcome back to the Student Scene by London Student Network, the podcast where we spotlight students, founders and innovators shaping life across London campuses and beyond. I'm Josh, and today I'm joined by George, the founder of RecruitGrd, a platform that is fundamentally rethinking how students and graduates find jobs that actually fit who they are. We're going to be talking about what's broken in the current graduate recruitment system, how AI is changing the way employers hire, and what students can do right now to stand out, even if they don't have loads of experience. So whether you're scrolling LinkedIn between lectures or panicking about grad schemes, this one's for you. Let's get into it. First of all, how are you, George? What's going on?
Doing good. I'm very excited. Me and Josh have been friends for a long time, and so we're on this journey, both starting our own things. And so I'm very excited, as always, to be talking with Josh and also seeing what's happening with LSN and the opportunities that you guys are focusing on creating for students. It's really cool to see.
Amazing. Yeah, and likewise, George, it's always been such a source of comfort and value. So for context for all listeners, George and I were lucky enough to go to school together way back when. And I don't think either of us would have been pegged as two people who were going to go and kind of forge their own path. I think both of us probably would have been looked at to be going down quite the traditional route, finding our own grad schemes, doing stuff like that. But it offered me a huge source of comfort when I started LSN, knowing that George was already kind of starting his own hustle, going through his own grind. Because I think, and you can probably attest to this, the nature of starting your own thing can be pretty lonely. It's kind of a rational thing to do.
Dude, it's like the stupidest thing to do, especially as a young person. It's like the worst possible time statistically to be considering starting your own company. You have like barely any experience. You have a very small network, unless you like rely on maybe your parents if you're lucky enough and school friends and things like that. It's like by far the dumbest time. But that's also what makes it exciting is because if you can like pull off a little bit of luck and a little bit of smarts and faith along the way, you can bring it all together.
Arguably, this might be the best time to do it. As I'm sure we're going to get into, getting a job is bloody hard. And there is so much experience to be gained and so much initiative of your own to be proved through running your own thing. Likewise, state of modern technology now, the existence of vibe coding platforms, which for those who don't know is basically a chat GPT for building apps, website, small little plugins and any kind of like developmental goals that you might have. It has lowered the barrier of entry to entrepreneurialism significantly, like never before. So, I mean, maybe a takeaway from this before we get into everything is if you can't get a job, start your own thing. And I bet even if it doesn't work out, you'll be way more equipped to getting a job in the future. What do you think about that?
For sure. I say it's the dumbest time because, like, you know, when you compare yourself versus a 50-year-old entrepreneur who's got funds and backing, can bootstrap his thing all the way, you're not as well equipped. And that's often like who you're competing against as a young guy is like this bootstrap company or this company has raised a bunch of money. And so I think whilst it's also the dumbest time, it's also the most exciting time because like you said, Josh, the barrier to entry is nothing. It's like you can have an idea one morning and by the end of that day have proof of concept and have demonstrated it. And like that's the coolest part about it. That's largely the journey that I went on with RecruitGrds. It very much just started off as a small idea that I quickly iterated on and was just able to bring to market very quickly because of that. And I'm sure you found the same thing over and over, Josh, with things that you've done and things you've seen as well, right?
For sure. And failure is a crucial tenet of not just getting a job, not just being a student, but the nature of kind of entrepreneurialism is that you're a scientist. You are throwing out features, you're iterating with your community, you're just trying different things and seeing whether they land and whether they stick. In order for that process to work, you've got to try and you've got to fail and you've got to become really, really at peace with things not going quite as well as they wanted you to do. And I think the nature of an entrepreneur is someone who is naturally ambitious. Probably the biggest challenge that I find, and I think you might be able to emphasize with George, is a simple thing where we live between our reality and our ambition.
Yeah, it always feels like it's a long way away from being where you want to be. And you just have to have faith that the actions that you're taking and focusing on those inputs is going to lead you to where your ambition is truly. And then you see your ambition show up every day, right? If you're truly an ambitious person that's also motivated by the thing that they're doing, you'll find it easy to show up every single day with that same ambition and motivation. And then it's like the reps and the reps and the reps, right? And it also it makes me interested as well, Josh, because I don't think I ever got the full story from you. Like when I think about an entrepreneur, everyone I speak to, all my mentors, they just tell me that it's just someone who's solving a problem, right? And that's how I've always viewed it. People have different views. What do you feel like is the problem that you're solving? And did you see it as a problem when you started it, or was it just a passion?
Yeah, great question. I'm being reverse hosted here. Love it. So I think the problem is fundamentally a communication issue. There's 500,000 students in London. There's 40 universities spread across over 100 campuses, all containing about 4,000 societies. There has never been even an attempt in history to unify all of that wonderful activity. The problem at core is that students are missing out on potentially hundreds of life-changing opportunities every single day. When I sort of became an entrepreneur, as it were, which still feels like an uncomfortable thing to say, that doesn't really slip off my mouth, it was an accident. All I had was a very basic proof of concept to begin with. I was running the KCL Politics Society, and we were just consistently getting messages from people at UCL, LSE, who were already actively looking outside of their original circles and network, looking for these wider opportunities. And people were clearly willing to travel from one university to another if they thought the event was worth it. And so that was all I need to kind of get the sort of ball rolling. And the basic concept was that the first thing we had to test was, do students want to go to events at other universities? So we did a big market research form. And turns out they did. 99% of students would travel for an exceptional event. And so the very kind of basic sort of minimum viable product, as it's been called, was just one really simple Squarespace website where a society could just post their events. And we've come a long way since then, fleshed out a load of different features, but we saw it working. We saw societies gaining an average of kind of 30% attendance, even when we didn't have that many students on the platform. Yeah, so that's kind of the start of it. And really that links back to my first question, which, let's start with your basics, George. What is RecruitGrds and how did it all begin?
Great. So it all begins because of students, right? Like what I fundamentally care about is the way that students are going about getting their first jobs, what they're doing at university, and way beyond that. And I'd say that my story really began when I was in second year and I just saw all my friends wasting their time at university. And I was just like fed up of being surrounded by that and decided that I was going to do something totally different, and was often viewed as an outcast for that reason. And, everything else that comes with that story, right? Of just doing this slightly different thing. And then from there, it's always just grown. And the real problem that I became passionate about was seeing failed strategies that students use to try and get a job, right? And it's this whole story that just like, for most, the average student story, right, is they get to their third year and it's like, holy crap, I want to apply to a job. Otherwise, my degree was a waste of time. And so like many of them go on gap years and things like that, not always out of choice, sometimes out of choice, and that's also great. But it's just all rooted back to failed strategy. And like my entire goal with what I do is to help students see that there's a much better strategy that they're not being told by their careers department or by their lecturers or by the people that they care about, because they used also the failed strategy, but their mentors' failed strategy worked in their era. But like now times are totally different and AI is being used throughout the process and it's almost a war. And I want to tie it all back to being human and students learning and growing and improving. So that's the brief background. Yeah.
It's absolutely a noble goal to fundamentally restructure the way that we approach recruitment, the way we think about getting jobs. It's admirable and necessary. I absolutely love it. Was there, do you think, a specific moment, a specific frustration you'd identified? Maybe it was your own struggling getting a job. Maybe it was watching your friends try and try again. But when did you think, shit, someone needs to fix this?
It's just, my story after graduating university was I genuinely got the job of my dreams and I was living the life that I dreamt of when graduating. For context, I graduated, got a great job, and have just been able to travel the world and pretty much do whatever I want since then. And the only reason I was able to do that is because of what I did at university to build the foundation for that thing. And so that's where it all stems back to. And I saw that my friends who didn't build that foundation then applied to hundreds of jobs during their final year, got rejected from 99% of them, and never once questioned their strategy. They were never once like, oh, let me just sit back and rethink, what am I doing here? Why am I applying to these companies? Why are they rejecting me in the first place? It's normally the response you hear is just like, the economy, the graduate schemes are terrible. It's all everybody else's fault apart from mine. And of course, it's a tough economy to be coming out and graduating. It's the worst since COVID, right? But it doesn't mean that the economy is not going to reward value where it is and where it is at. If you meet a company with value, like, you'll win.
For sure. And I think that's it. People aren't questioning their strategies. And crucially, when they finally get that job, there is no question of whether I actually want to do this job, whether it's like a service that I want to learn and be good at that's going to help me for future life. It is just a job seen purely as a means to an end, not an end in and of itself to kind of help you in your journey of self-fulfillment, as it were. And so I think you see these people trying for literally days, weeks, months, potentially years on end, trying to get themselves these grad jobs. They end up in one and they absolutely hate it. I can't imagine something more soul crushing. So
Yeah.
What's your own background? Were you a student founder? Have you got any past ventures? Did this idea come to you in uni? Where did you go to uni? What did you study?
So I did psychology at Exeter. I often refer to my university degree as sort of an obsolete side hustle. I find it hard to believe that I'm ever going to need it, and to this date have not needed it. And so like that's a pretty controversial take. So if you're someone who's like totally in, and by the way, like I think a lot of courses are very, very valuable. It's just the course that I took and the environment that I was in, I never really saw true value. So then while I was at uni, I just went through this long endeavor to find things that I was passionate about and enjoyed doing, which led me into sales. And I just like loved it, right? I just found it to be my night and day. And, when you find something that is a skill that, and you see the bigger point of view of it in that sales is just communicating at a really effective rate, you start to just become obsessed. And then, I was on a team of young guys who were all competing against each other to get better and better at sales. It's what you like traditionally see as like a toxic work environment. Like that's what most people report it as. But it's extremely effective for helping you grow and improve in every single way. And so through that endeavor, my goal was always, and this is what I think most graduates' goals should be to go broader. It should always just be, where can I go where I can learn as much as possible from people that I admire as much as possible. So you're like controlling for those two things. And if you just keep following those things, I think you'll make a lot of progress. So I did that with sales. I found a guy that I truly admired and a place where I could learn a lot. And then I had another opportunity arise, which I was only able to access because I had proof that I had the ability to do things and to push through tough times and to like communicate effectively, which was in an education startup. And this is where things changed a little bit for me, and I started to think beyond like, the status quo. I started to challenge that a little bit more in my own brain, because the company was fundamentally against university where I was at and what I'd been taught to do my whole life. And they was teaching this different route, and they were saying these different things about like the proof economy, and that university degrees are going to be obsolete and AI is going to win. And some of this stuff is just like marketing play. Like I don't actually believe AI is going to take over. I think we're totally good, and I think it's just going to change the way the workforce looks. But that's a lot of my story. And then, it made me really start to think deeply about the beliefs that I had, and also the beliefs that other people had that they didn't necessarily think for themselves for. Someone else placed that thought into their mind and they just acted upon it without truly considering it. And that's where a lot of recruit grads come from. It's about helping you think for yourself for the first time. It's hard to do that when you've just followed the traditional system your whole life. You're often not totally thinking for yourself. And so I want to help students step out of that and figure out what it is that they're motivated to do, what it is that they want to think about, and what it is that they want to work towards in their own lives. Yeah, great. So, look, we do it in a lot of ways. The main way I'm focused on helping students at the moment is just with with a bunch of value, right? Like firstly, I just want to help people consider their strategy. The biggest thing I'm hitting hard on at the moment is you'll see a lot of companies that are doing extremely well at the moment, right? Like Jack and Jill, you'll have heard of these, Josh, in the startup world. Jack and Jill, there's Juicebox, there's now this one called like Careers Growth, and they're all like these AI recruitment companies that will like ping you messages and just help you apply to as many companies as possible. The problem with this is that it's a flawed strategy, and research tells us that someone who applies to just 5 places will get as many offers as someone who applies to 60. And so all of these companies are incentivizing a bad strategy, like a strategy that's just scientifically proven to lose. And so my whole goal is helping students step outside and think for themselves about what it is they need to develop and helping them prepare for the proof economy, which is this economy that we are now moving towards, where the things that you do and the proof that you have behind them is what truly matters. What your degree shows is that you can really take knowledge, memorize it, and apply it. But what it doesn't show is that you have proof and evidence that you can actually show up in any environment and just like crush the problem or solve the challenge. And so that's what we do. We put students through these intense simulations, very real world based, where they tackle these wide scope objectives that like at first sense, you're kind of like, wait, I study medicine. What is this business objective you've just given me? And Josh will know the feeling because he's been through one. And you're like, dude, this is a business related thing. How does this apply to my degree? And it's like, this is helping you build all the skills that employers look for in graduates. And then that's what we help these employers get, is access to this pool of graduates that have gone through this process where they've learned, they've had feedback, they've improved, their data's been stored, and all of it accumulates so that when an employer sees you, they can see all of your performance history and these core skills so that they know when you show up on the first day, you're going to create impact and drive their company to success.
Love it. No, what an exceptional answer. And I think just touching base on the simulation. So my experience of working with RecruitGrds, I had no idea what to expect. All I knew was that there was a simulation. I had no real further information than that. And we just immediately, there was 3 of us from the team, and we just kind of plunged right into the task. And we're trying to identify all of these problems. We definitely overused AI, which is really indicative of the problem that George is speaking about. Like increasingly, AI is like a race. If you're not losing it, if you're not using it, you're going to fall behind. If you are using it too much, you're also going to fall behind again, because you're just kind of seeding all of your intelligence to this higher power that ChatGPT is becoming, for instance. And immediately, like, we were just met by, first of all, confusion. None of us had ever like worked on a task like this before. And also, and I think many students can relate to this, even if we could identify some of the root issues of what we were trying to solve when we were first looking at it, you second guess yourself massively and you go to AI for verification. And that needs to be made the other way around. You need to be doing, sort of 70% of the work with AI and then 30% of it, making sure that it's all okay, putting on that final gloss and that final polish. Whereas we did kind of the reverse, which didn't work very well for us. But so many good takeaways. And the crucial element of this simulation is not the simulation itself, but it's the wonderful feedback that George provides. He's worked with hundreds of students, maybe even thousands, on their strategies, on their kind of mental approaches to these simulations and tasks. And you don't mince your words. And I can only praise you for that. And you just say things exactly how they are. And that in and of itself is hugely valuable. If you are a student and you are battling your way through the job application scene, George's simulation, I think, costs £30. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just as another chance to look at things, to view the world slightly differently. It's well worth the money, I would say. And that's not a paid ad whatsoever. It's just a genuine piece of advice.
Yeah, the simulations, we're launching a campaign this month. It's for 140 simulations. It's £15 per slot. And there's going to be, the whole goal of it is like, it's to get a bunch of value. We don't want to make money from students. Like, that's not a profitable company, right? So the goal is to make money from companies by helping them improve their processes, and you as a young person actually learning. Like, if you're a young person, the chances that you are actually getting real, true, honest feedback every single day about your performance and about how to improve, I would bet it's like 1% of you, right? Probably like 0.01% of students are getting honest, real feedback, that helps them outside of university context. And that's what I want to help students have a platform for.
Love it. Okay, so getting kind of more into the sort of graduate job market today in its broader sense, from your perspective now, what is the biggest mismatch between students and employers?
So research tells us that there's this core set of skills and also attributes that make a big difference when you get into a job over the length of your career, right? For instance, if you are someone who doesn't have this core set of skills, you will find that at a point in your career, you'll get to like age 30, maybe 35, and your career will kind of be like, it's not going much further now. Whereas some people's careers, they kind of like have this steady growth, but then they're like, woomph. And the reason that there's this big like interlace in this change, and you'll see it when you look at people you admire in your life, is generally because they have a better grasp of this core set of skills. And so what we see is that employers, generally speaking, are unhappy with how graduates are showing up on the first day. And it's obvious why, right? Like, especially now, students are starting off in their first year with access to AI that they taught themselves to use at GCSE and A levels because the school didn't want to teach them, but they taught themselves how to use it. And so now they're using that to complete their whole degree, which means that critical thinking is basically evaporated, right? As well as their grit, because suddenly it's very, very difficult to actually step away from things and not need to use it to rely on it. And so we're seeing that there's this growing demand in employers to have students that have these core set of skills. And it's problem solving, emotional intelligence, communicating, critical thinking, adaptability. It's all of these things, right? And they all match together. And there's a significant difference between how pleased employers are. And so that's why we're helping employers find the students who have those skills.
100%. And I think that the clearest proof and evidence for that is the simple fact that most of the big grad jobs will have 5-6 stages of an application. All of those are there to test those sorts of skills and aptitudes. If employers were just thinking, oh, we just want people to do basic admin, then it would just be a one-stage cultural fit application. They know that every person is capable of doing that, especially with AI skills, etc. I think one thing from my experience of bringing people in, of like also helping a couple of people out with their recruitment process, is a really, really simple idea. And that is, why do we hire people in the first place? It is because we want to do less of the menial work and move on to the more high value stuff. If I'm an employer and I am opened just one position beneath me, I want them to do all of the work that I've been doing for ages that I think is quite doable, to free up my time so I can focus on different stuff. Crucially, I want them to come with a plan. I want them to just immediately step into the role and do and execute. Yes, on their first couple of days, they might have a load of questions for me. And I think asking questions, making sure you're on the right track, is very important and is indicative to your employer that you're wanting to do the right thing, you're wanting to learn, you're wanting to grow. There is a balance, however, between being the type of person who has come from a bureaucratic institution like university, thinks that everything needs to be double and triple checked, etc. And in some corporations, they might want you doing that. But broadly speaking, certainly in the startup world, it's all just about doing. It's just about adding value. And the longer you kind of pontificate over any given thing, bit or bob, the less value you add and the more time you take to manage. And the crucial thing to bear in mind is that you always want to be adding more to the company than draining from management time where they could otherwise be adding to the company as well. So I think that's it. And we spoke to Intern Outreach last week, and his whole model was about adding these kind of cold outreach emails, absolutely just brimmed with your value statements about what you can do. He would do kind of a full audit for the company. He'd look into what different things he might personally be able to do for that company. In his opening email, he has laid out a job description. It's pretty much then a simple yes or no from there for the employer. And that's all he's asking for. It takes him 20 seconds to reply instead of a crazy long-winded cover letter and email. He doesn't even write cover letters, for instance. So I think the lesson there is being brave, is backing yourself with the skills and the values that you definitely concretely have, and finding a way to channel those into whatever company it is that you want to work for, such that you're offering them all of this value from the first email of, I've looked at everything you're doing. Here's all of the things that I can do to help you from the areas that I don't think you are currently sort of saturating your workflows enough in. Why would anyone say no to that?
Yeah, it's exactly that. And it's the same thing because you see a lot of students get through to an interview stage or something, and they think that they're just like in this phase now where they're going to be questioned and their background's going to be checked. And you kind of just like associate it with defensiveness, right? It's like, okay, here's why I'm a great candidate, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. And it can become a terrible interview. And so, what a lot of students fail to miss is that sort of pitch that you said at the end there, where it's like, here's what I want to do when I join your company. And like, if you just do something like that in the final minute of your interview, and you're like, look, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with me today. And I just wanted to share a quick thought. I went through your process and also learned about this. And I thought there's a way that we can improve that that's going to save you tons of time and improve the efficiency. That's the first thing that I focus on doing if I joined your company. It's like, how are they not going to hire you? Because who else is going to do that? And who else is going to like prove that they can do that?
For sure. Yeah. And if you can just do one little useful thing, I mean, one of the amazing things we learned in the accelerator is when you're wanting to kind of integrate with like a really big business, or you're wanting to kind of prove your utility. As I mentioned, these vibe coding tools exist. If you can find like one very small process that can just be improved, it doesn't have to be massive. It can genuinely be done in like 3 or 4 prompts over the space of half an hour. And you apply with some kind of demo to this thing that you've already built. There is no question on the employer's side of your initiative, of your ability to add value. And so just from day one, add that value. It's not about who you are, how you are intrinsically valuable. It's about who you are that allows you to add the value.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you can do those things, you're gonna win, and that's what I want to help students do is reduce and see that that barrier to getting proof is not as big as you think, right? Because sometimes I talk about the proof economy, and this economy that we now live in, where it's what you can show you can do that matters, and students are like, but how on earth do I get proof for this job? How do I demonstrate it? How do I what do I do? And it's by far the easiest time to get out there and do that thing. Like you said, it's you might see a problem one day. You're like, let me just try and solve this, and then send it to 10 people and get some feedback on it. And then send it to 10 more people and get some feedback on it. And then before you know, you've probably got a first client that's working with you for free, and then a testimonial, and then proof that you can like bring something together quickly, execute on it, and get good feedback. And so then when you're looking for specific jobs like marketing, and this is the worst one. People are like, how do I get proof of concept that I'm going to be a good marketer? And it's like, what do you mean? Like, there's so many ways to go out there and prove that you can market and like help people do a good job of it. And so like, yeah, when I'm talking about the proof economy, that's what I'm really talking about is getting out there and getting some proof that you're going to kick ass in your first job.
That's it. And if you can't find a battleground to prove yourself in, if you can't get that initial job or opportunity, make your own. People think about businesses as these huge overarching entities, mega corporations that need to be performing thousands of services and taking in millions of pounds. No, so many businesses are unprofitable, are pre-revenue. We have guys in the accelerator who have been funded for millions of pounds before they even had a product, for instance. That is like the way that the world is going. It's based on ideas. And so if you can just have 1 or 2 good or useful ideas, which 100% you have, and if you haven't, then look within yourself, look at what you're good at, look at the day-to-day problems that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life, and just try and come up with at least a plan to fix one of them, so that whenever an employer asks you that critical question of show me a time where you went above and beyond when you didn't have to, you've got it. And that really is probably the crux question in any given interview. So moving on then, you've probably seen thousands of applications, George. What do you think are the most common mistakes that students are consistently making?
I think they screw up way before the application. And like, it's just, again, it's going to come back to the strategy. I think before they go like straight into it, they don't know what they're going into. And they've been told to just like apply to as many places as possible. It's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. Like, that's how you're going to win. And so I actually don't think a whole lot can go wrong if you have the right strategy in place and have the right information and knowledge. You just then have to execute on it correctly, right? And so the problem is people are just executing on the wrong thing, but they're executing in a great way. It's not like the execution ability is not there. Some people are applying to 100 places a day or using an AI tool to do that because they were told just apply, apply, apply. And so I think just way before you get into the depths of it, it's like, know what your strategy is, know what the market and economy is looking for right now. So for instance, you want to go into marketing, identify which companies that you love the look of and you think would be impactful to work for, and then figure out what it is that they're looking for. What are the exact things that they want to see in a graduate in an interview? And before you even start writing your CV, go out there and develop them. And if that means that you're applying 2-3 months later than your friends and you miss some graduate job opportunities, you're going to win in the long run because you reduce the stress that you undertook, because you weren't applying and getting rejected from hundreds of places. And you increase the chance that when you do apply, that you actually win. And so,
And that
yeah,
you like the job because you spent the time thinking about what you can do for the company, and in turn, whether you emphasize with the company at all.
exactly. It's, it all comes down to strategy. And it's not students' fault that they're stuck doing this. It's just what they were told to do and they're executing on it. Like, they're doing a great job. Um, and so I just want to help them see there's a different way to it. And the different way serves a lot of people who figure it out.
For sure. Okay, so 2 more questions then for you, George, before we get into the quick fire round. First of all, what is the one underrated career move students should consider while still at uni?
Yes. It's a subjective answer. And the answer is go and figure out how to sell something. Reason being that if you can just like come up with some sort of product or concept that you can cold call people or get a referral on the phone to and sell them something and pitch them and like fail horribly because there's a good chance that you can't communicate effectively yet and like suck at selling something and you sound totally salesy and it will never work, right? No matter how much like training you do. But what it's going to help you do is just gain some confidence and gain that little bit of an edge when you show up to an interview and like you've learned a little bit more about how to be charismatic and how to be interesting. And then, you'll just show up with that little bit of extra finesse. That would be my advice.
For sure, for sure. And so last major question then for you is, if you could redesign the hiring process from scratch, what would it look like?
Great. So first off, we kill the whole thing. Okay. It's all dead. And then I think the world is totally based on skills and your ability to improve them. And so I think skill-based hiring wins, and companies that skill-based hire have proven that time and time again. They have more effective employees that come and join. They add more value. They get a better return on investment. And so it all turns to skill-based hiring. And then the way that students are assessed is they're all assessed through a process where they have fun, they learn a bunch, they meet new people, and like actually figure out what it is that they want to do. And that's what we do. That's the goal with RecruitGrds and the simulations that we run and the processes they go through. And also that these employers that you're going to have a whole database of your performance history. So students that do simulations with us, they do them 2-3 times over. And then employers can see your growth trajectory, how much you've improved each year at university, what your plans are next, and an intro video on you. And it's all saved, it's all stored. You don't have to apply to millions of places. And you have the right strategy in our community of applying the things that you're actually passionate about. And so I want to rewire it to not be getting jobs out of this scarcity mindset. Because the ultimate goal is to help reduce the barrier to entry for companies that aren't recruiting graduates by demonstrating how valuable graduates are. And so the whole thing, I want to rewire it all and get students and also companies out of the scarcity mindset and have you thinking of a place of abundance. Like there are so many more jobs that you could find that you will love. And so just focus on building your skills and being ready for when that opportunity comes around.
Love it. No, fantastic. And I think a lot of that like signals a need for the employer to change as well. Potentially, instead of like, we're hiring for these roles, we're hiring for these problems. And I want you to come up with these solutions towards the 3 biggest issues the company is facing at large at the minute. And I think that changes how we think about companies. Yes, like you and I, George, are in a position where we're dealing and putting out hundreds of problems in a given day, small little fires here and there. But for a bigger company, that's tens of thousands of fires. We just tend to think that they are really stable and really secure, but we need to look at them as these changeable entities that we in and of ourselves can have ability to change, to influence, and to make better. Awesome.
I love it.
Okay, so final thoughts then, George. Some quick fire questions before we wrap up today. Worst interview question you've ever been asked?
Last interview question I've ever been asked. Why do you want this job?
It's biggest red flag in a company.
If they have a terrible application process and they don't value your time.
Great. Coffee or pints for networking?
I'm an espresso man all the way.
Okay. If you could have one dream guest on this podcast next, who would it be?
I would love to see. I'd love to see Elon Musk. I think he's in your reach, right?
On the student scene, absolutely. We'll get him in next week. Okay. Most underrated skill for students?
Most underrated skill. I think it's emotional intelligence.
Great. One job you would never do again?
I had one terrible job at a pub where I literally had an argument with the owner, and the owner packed up and left that shift rather than me. So I wouldn't go back and do that.
Great. And best bit of career advice you've ever heard?
Solve problems that you want to solve, right? So join a company that's solving a problem that you care about, that has good people in it, and where you can learn as much as possible.
Amazing. Okay. If you could give then one piece of advice to every London student about careers, what would it be?
Set yourself up for the proof economy.
Fantastic. Okay, so that's it for today's episode of the Student Scene by LSN. Huge thank you to George and the RecruitGrds team for joining us today. Go check them out if you're looking for your next step after uni, or you're just wanting to learn a little bit more about the amazing work that he's doing. If you enjoyed this chat, hit follow, share it with a friend, and check out londonstudentnetwork.com for more student stories and opportunities across the city. I'm Josh. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Josh.